first of all, I think I'm a hypno-geek, really. At heart, I live, breathe, and speak hypnosis all the time. And I swear my children think I've got something wrong with me, especially my husband, when I'm still kind of delving in to working on the work. And for me, it's a passion. I get in the car and I drive to work and I still enjoy it just the same as the first day I started. The difference is I've developed a lot. And I think what I want to share with you is how I work with addiction clients, because a lot of our clients have different styles of addiction. And there's not really one size fits all, but I want to explain a little bit about how I holistically work with them and tune into that inner compass, that part of them that knows who they are, what they've been through, what they need to do next. So Sarah was saying about, that idea of getting the guide, and the guide's you. Well, I guess I hop into getting them to own that inner compass, that part of them that knows stuff. And it might have been turned right down. And it might have been even turned off and put pause for a while. But something happens with addiction clients as they come in and they've hit saturation point. Could be a number of reasons. Could be health. Could be a situation that they're not able to get on with things because of their alcohol abuse or something like that. It could be a relationship breakdown and breakthrough in some cases that causes them to stop and think, I need to clean up my act. I need to address this addiction cycle. Addiction is not just the normal stuff that we think about, like alcohol, drugs, food. It's sometimes a mindset that you're addicted to. It's a way of being and how you turn up to stuff. So people have excuses like, oh, no, I'm not tech savvy, or oh, no, I'm not that way inclined. I'm like, according to whom and what? Like, at what point did you define yourself in that way? So sometimes the addiction mindset is more than just the physical behavior that you might think of first off. It's sometimes this incessant way that they're treating themselves behind the scenes. Not just physically, but emotionally. What's the internal attitude that's going on for that client that's not working? That's causing them distress, that's causing them sleepless nights, that's causing them an interruption in how they're going about life. The ego, what's that saying about themselves? So as a hypnotherapist, one of the most important things I was ever told is to be curious. And when we're kind of looking at that idea of being curious, that's a part that you want to go, well, what's really going on here? And understanding also the client has the answer. These two premise positions are really important to work together. Often what concerns me most when I do start teaching is watching and observing that first sort of naive practice of hypnosis and helping your partner. And what people tend to accidentally do is go into problem-solving mode on behalf of that client. Oh, I know, how about, well, how do you use this? And they kind of hop in. Now, that's a big red flag for someone who's got an addiction, especially a serious one, because as soon as you get into that part of telling them what they could do, they might slip into resistance. Problem, Houston. So when we're looking at a resistant client, we need to move them into action. We need to kind of go, okay, well, let's get back to the pros and cons. Let's think about what's going on for that person. So really, today's objective is understanding how holistic hypnotherapy approach can help individuals overcome any kind of addiction, whether it's physical or an emotional addiction of a way of being in themselves. The art of forgetting, yourself, who you are. When we're looking at that idea of programming, people have stories, right? Well, what if your story was your 7-year-old story? Like you came to a conclusion at some point that you weren't good enough, and you're only 7. You haven't even had a chance. But there it is, gone in, and it's growing into something not so great. And people often will go towards addiction cycles to medicate an emotion, right? So if we're thinking about medicating an emotion, cocaine, sugar shit, all of that stuff is a big thing. And of course, we get the reward center going ding, 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 ding. Oh, that felt good. And we return to that behavior. Now, strangely, pleasure and pain can be quite weird. So a lot of people get used to being in pain. They don't even imagine their life being pleasurable. So they normalize their state, which is a problem. So I guess for me, I have to be an optimist when I'm dealing with clients. I do believe everyone has the ability to change and rearrange and reinvent themselves to the best version of themselves possible. But I don't know what that is. That's a really important part, is you're holding space for that client. And you're really tuning and go, okay, what are the open-ended questions that I might need to elicit to allow that client to suddenly hear themselves? I always invite a client session to be recorded from beginning to end. Not for me, but for the client. I want the client to observe themselves from another point of view, because when they're in it, they're so autopilot about their story that when they step back and they listen to their story from that more dissociative state, it's quite a aha moment for many of them. So I've been recording my sessions for years. I'm a really strong advocate for that, not just the hypnosis, the whole thing. I do it in 2 parts so they don't have to kind of fast forward and try and find the beginning of the next one. But what is important is the client needs to also be honest with themselves. And in an addiction cycle, that honesty is a little bit frayed. There's often just justification stories. The reason why that's important, the reason why they are never going to be able to get to being that, whatever that means for them. Okay? So when we're looking at that idea of working with the addiction mindset, there are 3 parts to an addiction: the physical, the emotional, and the habit. Yeah, hungry, lonely, sad, tired, bored, stressed, all of these things are going on. Bing, like a domino effect, you start to run a program. It's a learned one, right? So what are our job as hypnotherapists? We're there to interrupt it. Because if they want to change it, then at some point it has to be interrupted. If we are not successful in interrupting that, then the client will go back into their amnesia, back into their hypnosis and their self-fulfilled prophecy of doom and gloom, right? So we need to shiny up the session. We've got to get them on board. When we're looking at that idea of why you address all those aspects, if you don't look at the emotional, the physical, and the habit, and maybe, I guess, what they're learning from it, the overarching, let's imagine there's no mistakes, just learnings. They're not broken, but they might feel that way. So they feel deficient. So you've got to kind of go, well, actually, we all go through stages of learning, and this is just another one of those. So when I'm working with a client, I'm very much into ego strengthening. That client feels like $100, $1 million, trillion, whatever. So really rich. By the time they walk out of the door, their ego is being boosted, but it's because I'm hearing them. I'm not just saying whatever. I'm listening to them and I'm challenging some of the stuff. So when we're looking at NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and the idea of just tuning into the language patterns, quite often they'll do an over-gross exaggeration of position, so a universal quantifier. You all know what that is? Yeah? So when we're kind of looking at that in an addiction space, we want to hear what is their exaggeration statement of belief. How might we start to challenge that? So the client starts to think again, what comes next? It is important that by the time your client walks out the door, finishes that session, that there is a huge shift in their confidence. So using the SUDS scale, 1 to 10, from 1 to 10, how confident are you? So when we're dealing with addiction, it's a really important aspect of gauging the client's shift or change. If we don't have that from the beginning and then a measure at the end, it's very subjective, right? So it is important that the client also acknowledges, hey, there's been a shift. I had a client the other day and he came in, he was a chain smoker, truck driver, and he'd been to someone, won't say who it was, but they had a money back guarantee. And after the session, he went out, lit up, went back in. And he was hypnotized again. He went out, lit up, went back in. And the person who did that said, oh, well, there's your money back. Obviously, you love it too much. Wow. That's not how I work. So on my shift, I am very curious about what's really going on here. What is that person's sort of core belief? How old was he when he started smoking? What was the reason why he wants to quit? Pros and cons, what's in it for me? What's the carrot? What is going to benefit him long term? Because if you don't address that, pros and cons, you won't get the proper buy-in. And you can't utilize that in the hypnotic journey either. So understanding how to ego strengthen, understanding how to get their golden nuggets, those little words that they're saying that's treasure to them, you need to be able to really make sure you've got that and somehow weave that back into the journey in the hypnotic way. I'm very much a fan of Ericksonian hypnosis, and in conversational hypnosis, we can use that all the time. I'm playing around and they are in a trance and they're going to have this shift and profound effect going on. It's amazing how quickly someone can go from not sure if I can ever do this in my life, but I'll give it a go, to getting to that point where they are ready to rock and roll by the time we walk out the door. Huge, huge. So this guy, at the end of our session, I said, okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you now in your level of confidence? Now, I had forgotten to ask the SUDS at the beginning, funny now, but that's okay too, because you can ask, well, before you got in here, what were you? So that's okay. If you forget to do it first, you can do both later. So he said an 8, 7, 8. I'm like, what were you before? Goes a 0. I'm like, all right. So what would a 10 mean? And that for him was to do it, to actually action it. It would become more real. So he had moved himself very well up that readiness, confidence level scale. What happens if it's not quite enough? Now, the way you as a hypnotherapist handle that counts. So if you suddenly go get concerned, well, I guess, you'll quit when you're ready. No, normalize it. Even if it's 1 degree better than it was before, it's the movement. Acknowledge it. Because not every session will be your amazing session, by the way, because you do not have a remote control over all the individuals that are coming in your door. You're going to have to deal with some resistant clients who were pushed into it. It maybe even someone else paid for the session. They're not really that ready. So somewhere in there, you've got to build up their belief and support them in that belief through the questions you ask, the reflective listening that you show that you're really hearing, but also the challenges. The challenger questions. Why is that true for you? How long have you felt like that? Okay. What would happen if you didn't? All of those kind of clever questions. We underestimate the power of questions, and they change worlds. When a person asks the right question, the light bulbs go on. Self-actualization, the most powerful way you can get a resistant client to action. It has to come from them. They have to own it, like the magic carpet ride. There needs to be that internal part that agrees that that's okay and activates that imagination of possibility. Big thing. When we're thinking about a core part of relaxing, if a client can relax enough in their whole state, they're going to do better generally. Because if they're stressed about change or the idea of quitting something that's been their lifeline, trust me, that's not a nice state to be in. So we need to get them to be masters of relaxation. So these are 3 keys that I teach. And they are very effective. Andrew Huberman, who's gone into Huberman Labs and gone into that? Yep. They were doing a sleep study at Stanford University, and they were looking at really good ways to breathe to calm the farm, to help support the central nervous system. What was interesting is if I demonstrate this to all of my clients, they totally get it. So this is what I do with a client. So, you know, when you're really upset or you've seen someone really upset, they do something and it's universal. They go, right? It's relatable because your central nervous system's just gone a little bit out of sorts and it's wanting to reset itself. So the Huberman Lab, they did this experiment and they incorporated breathing in twice in a row through the nostrils, nice and quick, and then slowly out through the mouth until there's nothing left, like a sigh. So even just 1 to 2 rounds is effective enough to affect the heart rate. It's sending a message into the central nervous system, I am safe, I'm calm, I'm well. Now, if you want the person who wants to go through change, avoid fuck it mode, fuck it, I don't care, I'm just going to do it anyway, you know, and they revert to old behavior, then having mastery of relaxing is a key part. Making sense? Shift body, mind follows. So when you are relaxed physically, your mind can go to channel happy better. If, however, you're sitting there and you're doing this and kind of really tense, what's mind doing? It's really hard to shift that mind into channel happy and optimistic. So we must get the client to really understand how important relaxing is and to share tools with them. So this is something that I always drill in, especially with my quitting smoking clients. Because if they're not going to have the cigarette, they can have a breathing break instead. That's a really nice 1-for-1. But even, you know, any kind of addiction mindset, you rest and digest when you're calm and relaxed. So you're going to actually have less cortisol so you can lose weight, you can do other things if you've got that calm zone happening. When we want to change something from an old way of doing it to a new way, if you're all flustered, how good are we at that? So it kind of goes, if we're kind of lost the plot, if we're rushing, we need to allow the client to be master of relaxing and going into those situations way before time. So talking about quantum, you know, ideas of journeying and going to the past. I mean, this is what we do, right? So we invite the client to really journey into the future and elicit that, what does success look like? Have you ever felt like that in the past? Okay. They might go, no. Yeah, right. That'll be a brand new state for them. What might it be like if you were doing well? Let's start brainstorming, getting them to think about what that might be like. It's probably the opposite of what it was. So many times I'll use that journey to get them into relaxing, even in the session, so they're actually listening to the session and kind of fully present. Because if you've got a nervous client in front of you, how much do you think they're really retaining? So if you can get them to land, you notice that they're a little bit. I have a box of toys. I was showing Teresa the other day, and they're play toys. So it doesn't matter how old you are. Some people are fiddlers. I know I am. I wear things that I can play with all the time. But ADHD clients, think people who are a little bit sort of everywhere, it's really nice to have a fiddle toy for them to kind of play with. I used to have this frog and it had that like spikes. It wasn't really a frog, but it kind of looked frog-like. And I swear, it was like a psychic link across all my clients. One would come in and it would knot them all and leave them all knotted. And then another one would pick it up and unknot them. It's really interesting. Didn't last long, but that was an interesting froggy one. But when we're kind of looking at that idea of body language and posture, huge. I share a story about an experiment that was done, and they were watching blind people winning things, and they all do this power pose, right? So they look up and they go smile, and out goes the hands. Why is that important to understand? Well, they ran the experiment. They got two groups of people. One group were to sit or stand in a submissive pose, get small for 3 minutes. And the other group were to get tall, be in a power pose for 3 minutes. They then took the testosterone levels from the saliva before and after, and there was an elevation of testosterone in the group that were in power pose. So it made a big difference to their ego. And then they ran a whole lot of what we call experiments around gambling. And the group that always did better were the power poses. So they didn't even ask them to think differently. The fact that their chemistry changed because of the way that they're holding themselves is huge. So when someone's got an addiction mind and they're wanting to break away, if they're holding on to that addiction, chances are they're holding tension in their body that goes with that thought. So if they can actually let go of their body, as well as have that optimistic mindset, that's huge. So many times, let's say it's a smoker and they kind of start tapping and they start to feel this, time for smoke, and they're getting a little bit antsy. Well, the more they do this kind of tense stuff, the more tense they're going to become. You kind of slam that cupboard and they ramp it up. They go, fuck it, just going to help. So if we want to get that client to success, and not just for a little while, but long term, I talk to my clients about relapse prevention. It's a big part of what I do with them. But if we really want to engage that client in a really holistic way, you want to look at not just the person that's sitting in front of you, but the potential that's sitting in front of you, and allow them to really revive it, because it was there all along. They just forgot. They forgot how divine they are. They forgot how amazing they are. And that's also another part of my ego strengthening journey, that I take them back to the very time they were conceived. It's just little cells in their mother's womb, dividing, creating eyes to see the world, ears to hear, mouth to speak, heart to beat, lungs to breathe, skin, bones, tissues, ligaments, everything they could possibly need. And there was a moment their genius self knew how to let the heart go for the first time. And then they came out into the world and they took their very first breath in their lungs, even though their lungs had never done it before they knew how. And they started breathing. And there were so many wonderful things in the Ericksonian early learning patterns. You know, your ego strengthening, you're reminding the client these complex things. There's a part of you that knew how to work it out. I love utilizing that idea of storytelling and getting them to remember their genius moments, and allow that to really anchor them into a positive ego, positive state, to get them to the other side feeling like, I've got this. That's essential. Now, mental focus, shifting the mind towards that relaxation is huge. When we're looking at that idea of incorporating that even before the formal hypnosis, we can get them to take a moment to breathe. So Adam this morning, what did he do? He just said, take a deep breath in on your exhalation, close your eyes. Okay. It's that easy. Doesn't take much, but if a client's never been hypnotized, sometimes they're scared you're going to take them over, right? It's like, oh, don't be in charge of me. I want to be in charge of myself. So it's important that you're normalizing all these steps, and during that time, you're building rapport. The big part of your session is trust. If they don't trust you, don't feel comfortable with you, how's the session go? Right? If you don't feel relatable in some way, how's the session go? Some of my first clients, so this truck driver, coming back to him, when COVID is very interesting because we stopped shaking hands. I've never done that, it's not my thing. But with this truck driver, our first interaction was on the phone. And he hadn't looked at my website, wasn't interested in that. I'm like, okay, old-fashioned guy, good, right? So right from the word go, I need to be really firm about how it's going to go. So in that first session, that's your quit date. Okay, good. I've got the first okay. Not yes, but. I just want to try it. No, none of that. On the first date, that's your quit date. And then when we follow up the next time, it's going to be talking about relapse prevention, not just quitting, but staying quit for life, okay? So already you've got a buy-in. You've got a level of confidence coming through. This is huge. Because if you use passive language at this point with someone who's really, really not great and maybe a bit, what we call old school about stuff, they're going to walk all over you. So you need to be careful about how you hold ground. So body language, what's the first thing that I do? I go out into the waiting room, I have a big, huge, welcoming smile, and I shake his hand, and I do it nice and firm. None of this, you know? What does that translate to my client now? What are some things it's telling the client?
They're excited in what they're doing.
Yep.
Trustworthy.
Trustworthy. Yep. Now, why is that ingredient important in what we do? Like, why are those things essential?
But you're the expert.
Yeah. Now, even though they have the magic, which I'm going to give him the magic actually, which is how I got him to accelerate, because I'm like, not about me, dude. This is about you. I'm going to get you to own it right from almost the beginning. You think you come to me, I'm just a guy, but you're the one with the magic. And at some point, I need to reiterate that so clearly that he starts ownership, because I'm not going to ownership for him. I'm not going to be that other hypnotherapist that goes, sorry, you give your money back. No, it's not going to be on my ship. No. So when we're looking at that idea of creating that empowered response, that's really important. So I go through this 3 keys. And he didn't seem very impressed. It was quite interesting. So, okay. Because he goes, I say to him, so how do you inhale and exhale your smoke? Show me. He goes, I'm like, come on. You really just go, he goes, no, I'll probably do it longer. I'm like, so do it longer. Go on. I'm like, yes, that's right. And then I explain about the sleep study, and I explain about what they found out, and I do my, and he goes, oh no, I've never done that, but I have seen my son do it. One little one. So still a little bit interesting to deal with this one. So you've got to be really careful about pacing with the client, especially with an addiction cycle, as long as that one had. So he'd been smoking since he was 13, and he was now in his, it was about 62. It's a long time. He doesn't know the world without it, right? So at some point, we need to shift the story. We need to work on that belief. So here I am going through the 3 keys, and I need him to drop in. I'm like, no, we need to get him out of his kind of alert state and really start to feel this shift. So I'm quite persistent until they get it right. I'm not, sort of pandering to their halfway effort. I'm going to go, okay, they can do this. So we're going to do it. Now, if they're still doing this half, no. So what happened was he did his half. I said, so how do you feel? Half knowing what he was going to say, he's a bit lightheaded. I'm like, yeah, because you didn't let it go. You've got to let it go. Take time. Oh, we'll do it again. Now I know that he's just entered into what zone? Compliance. Thank you. So as a hypnotherapist, what are we looking for? Compliance. Yes. Not this, yes, but. Because if you still got that halfway into your session, it's not going to go well. So you've got to get that compliance. You've got to get a client playing with you in some way that makes sense to them, that they can kind of go, okay, yeah, I can use that. Right? So compliance. When we're looking at compliance, once you've got that, the rest becomes easier. It's like a domino effect from there, because one, your trust levels have just gone up. He's now participating with me and things are going well. It's getting colder. Isn't it funny? It's like one extreme to the sun's coming in. Don't worry, the icicles. So we're looking at that mental focus. We've got to get the client to understand the power of address reversal of success. At this point, I'm also talking to the client about how important their imagination is and how that can assist them into the future of success. Because I know I was once a 40-a-day smoker and I had no idea what my non-smoking me looked like at all. In fact, it was terrifying at that point when I was sitting at that side of my addiction and thinking of life ever beyond that. It's a very strange position. So when we're looking at the client needs to know how powerful they are. So I do the little imagination exercise just to make sure they don't have aphantasia. That's nice. So I said, just close your eyes. And of course, he was still kind of interesting. I said, can you imagine an apple in your mind thinking about this professional development that I've done the other day, going, yeah, I'll use that apple. And he goes, no. I'm like, oh. Can you imagine your house and just walking through it? He goes, yep, I can imagine that. I'm like, good. No apple? And he can imagine his house. Fine. Who knows why? But as long as I knew he could imagine things, I said, great. That means that it's going to be really easy for you to be able to do this hypnosis journey and really imagine yourself in the future, isn't it? So what have I just done then? Who's noticed those language patterns?
Take a question on the end.
Yeah. So when we're looking at that idea of a tag question and that yes, this is compliance too. You know, you're building, your ego strengthening. This is a crucial part of the way that I'm working with a resistant client. So by the time you're kind of getting into the formal hypnosis, they're more likely to move into that space and follow the instructions. If you haven't got that kind of pliability before you go into the more formal stage of the hypnosis, you might find they're not going to be quite with you. So that can gauge, you know, their suggestibility and their rapport and their ability to uptake something new, to try something new. I also reward the client a lot for turning up. Just that. So, well, there's a part of you that obviously wants change. Is that right? What am I doing? Okay. I do that a lot. And I'm layering it in there because I want them to move towards that possibility. Let's just move on. So when we're looking at that idea of relaxing, do you want to do a bit of a journey?
Yeah.
You might want to say,
Yes.
no. Okay, so let's take a moment. Place your body nice and relaxed, hands down. Just be a moment. Well, the first thing I want you to notice too is just your body position. Just notice how it is and just notice any areas of tension that might have been accidentally there. Because sometimes when we're sitting on our bums for a long time, we get a little bit sore. So if you need to adjust, you can, of course. And you might put your mind into a soft focus. You might close your eyes, just keep your eyes open in front of you. Just whatever feels comfortable. And either way, it's a nice thing to do as we just journey inward. We notice our physical form. We might even notice just our breath and how it is. No need to force it, just observe it. You might notice the coolness of the inhalation and the warmth of the exhalation. And you also have the power of your breath, don't you? You have the power to slow it down, make it more rapid. And there's a part of you that knows which way you would breathe to relax you more and more. So do it. See how it feels. See how it feels to just follow your inner knowing, that inner compass, that part of you that knows who you are and how to be amazing. Notice how it can guide you into that really nice pace of breath. It's just right for you. It's like the perfect level. Perfection personified. Just like you. You're an incredible, powerful being with the potential to do whatever you want. You have free will, don't you? And with that free will, you are your own creator. You can create what chapter is next, can't you? That chapter of success. And every single one of you will have your own path of what you call success. Your own little idea, which is perfect in every way. And ideas are like seeds, aren't they? And it's like they just go into your beautiful mind garden of possibilities, growing stronger and stronger with each moment that passes. Where you get a moment to practice who you could be. You get to travel through time and space if you wanted to. And imagine your most powerful version of yourself, in whatever way you want. Because there's a part of you that knows exactly what that is. No one else can tell you what it is, because you're in charge, and always have been, haven't you? Even when you were little, there were times where someone might have told you what you should do and you didn't do it because it didn't feel right to you. And nod your head if that is true. And it's nice to do things that feel right to you, because there's a part of you, that inner compass that knows who you are and how to be amazing. And imagine today you could turn it up. You could travel again into the future and have that turned up to such a wonderful level that it's a genius level. It stimulates all the fibers, muscles, cells, and inside your entire being. And it's like this beautiful wave of energy that just gets amplified through time and space. And imagine along with that, that future could heal your past, and it could heal anything, actually, because anything is possible. Because ultimately, your energy, beyond your physical form, your energy, your cells vibrating, and with each breath, that life force energy is nourishing your cellular system, but it also allows your journey. It allows you to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve in the most empowering and meaningful way. And imagine there are certain words that you could switch this genius on. Words that just for you, you could use for yourself. Like a little light switch. As soon as you say those words in your mind, that state of genius gets switched on. But imagine you could switch it on in the future, and it could actually affect the you that you are now. You could change anything you wanted. Whatever addictions that might have happened in the past could just fall out of your mind, leaving you with your genius state. And there's a part of you that understands the power of suggestion. All of you understand how powerful words are. And your words can become more powerful than any words you ever speak out loud to anyone else. Because actually, at the end of the day, the words from within are always more powerful. The words that no one else gets to hear. And imagine that beautiful switch, that powerful switch, being turned on so properly from the future amazing you that it amplifies the you that you are right now, as if time does not exist. And that switch is very healing. Imagine too that you could do something really cool. And you could practice, if you choose, because you have free will, the breathing break. And you can run the experiment. And you might find as soon as you run that experiment, wonderful things happen. Incredible things. Things that delight your genius self and make your inner compass space smile. Yeah. I'd like you to imagine too that you could also, if you wanted, practice relaxing your physical body. Just doing a scan. And you might even begin to notice how much more relaxed you are generally. And how your mind switches into this positive mindset where anything is possible. And it's funny how quickly things happen. How it might even be, even in this day. Could be tomorrow. Could be next week. Or it could have already happened right now. That something shifted. And your conscious mind doesn't even need to know what that is for your subconscious mind to celebrate. That part of you, your inner compass, that knows what feels good. So very soon, we're going to count from 1 to 3. On the count of 3, it'll be time to open those eyes, time to return fully into your here and now, but bringing with you this wonderful, beautiful spark. Knowing you enjoyed a pleasant, relaxing experience in loving and caring for yourself. 1, becoming aware of your toes, your legs, your upper body, your arms, your hands, your fingers. 2, where this time, this space, your head, neck, and shoulders. And 3, eyes open, wide awake. Nice. I could see a few little weakness. Excellent. So, when we're looking at the role of belief and reinforcing addiction, this belief story is big. You gotta get them to erase the fuck out of it. Like, it does not exist anymore, that old thing, whatever that is. So you've learned through different techniques that you allow them a chance to let go of it, destroy it, do whatever they need to do, but let the client work out how that is. Don't be over prescriptive, but you can invite them to say, would you like to let that go out of your mind in some way? So they're going, yes. Compliance 101, right? Then you say, well, how would you like to let it go? Now, you can do it in conversational hypnosis, or you can do it in more formal hypnosis. If you do it in the conversational hypnosis, it's ego strengthening, it's building, and it's prepping them for it all to go, woof, come together. So by the time they've got to the formal hypnosis, they've done it all the work anyway. It's just icing on the cake. Is that making sense? Mm-hmm. So when we're looking at changing the story, it's usually something that they need to own. They need to know why that story is going to change and how it's going to change to. Got to have that space there in that session to grow that. I use a negative positive. Those that have seen me present over the years, I've kind of got an exercise where I just get them to flip it. So I say, well, what's the old story? What's the belief? What's the old sort of action? What's the emotion that belongs to it? And what's the opposite? If you weren't doing that, what would you be doing? If you weren't believing that, what would you be believing? If you weren't feeling that, what would you be feeling? So these are important things to look at, because that's going to help you build the case for change, right? So we're going to talk about the 3 Ds: detachment, determination, and direction. So detachment, breaking the emotional mental connection with the addictive behaviour. That pattern interrupt, when you ask them certain questions, you get them to wake up out of their trance of being. This is important. They need to feel like they've let it go somewhere in the session. You need to have that process where you give them permission to let it go. The determination is huge too, and part of that willpower and is skill power too, by the way. So they need to have some kind of assets, like what's my new toolkit? So coming back to the 3 keys to relaxing, that's a big part of the toolkit. That's like, oh, I can breathe, I can relax my body, and I can point my mind to channel happy. Good, got it. So part of that is big, and it's going to build on that determination journey. So that is huge in the way of long-term recovery, because a lot of people, they fuck up, don't they? They go, I don't know. Something might have happened and they weren't prepared for it, and they forget all the work. And it could be 10 years, 20 years down the track. It just takes one moment, one little moment, and they slip. And it's as if that 20-year didn't even happen. For many, they just go right back into it. It's really interesting. So having that direction, finding a purpose that's coming back to what's in it for them, what's that carrot? You want to get that right in the session. You've got to get that client really focusing on what's the power of the shift. And let that be the strongest emotion winning, right? So the strongest emotion wins. That's a big part of eliciting power within that client session. So when we're looking at that idea of practical techniques, so obviously we can deal with those subconscious triggers. What are we going to ask them? Potentially we're going to say, well, when do you do it? What happens? Why do you think you do it? What's the reward? Okay. You know, so you're asking, you're getting them to look at that and go, well, what would you like to do next time you're in that situation? You're dealing now with the trigger properly. This is important because you're going to have to prime them for success in that journey. If you don't do that, then you haven't really done the relapse prevention work, because there are many triggers and they're very layered. So you've got to kind of be very careful that you've covered enough of those in their standard, what's going to happen between week 1 and 3. But it might be a once-a-year trigger. Might be the anniversary of someone passing. It might be a wedding. It could be something else that interrupts them that's not normal. So you need to address these things. So what kind of question are we going to ask them potentially about long-term or long triggers, not just the triggers every day in this like short term? What kind of questions might we be asked? Any ideas?
How would you like to see yourself in that situation?
Yeah, but how would you mind for what the situation is?
Oh, okay.
Have you noticed a pattern?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. What else? Maybe they have not actually ever quit before or anything like that.
Sorry, what was that you just said?
Oh, have you noticed the pattern? If this happens?
Yeah.
What might get in the way?
Yes, yes, nice question. Yeah. So we're eliciting an idea of something may get in the way. If that were, what would you do? So you're not looking at hindsight and going, well, yes, I didn't quite manage that. You want to get them in that session to kind of think, yeah, what are potential things that could get in the way, that could be a bit of a challenge. If you don't ask that, trust me, a really addicted person doesn't want to share it with you because it's a slight out. Just saying. It can be a slight little sliver out of it. You go, I'm not going to say about that just in case, you know, I get to that point and I have got no way of getting through it.
Yeah. It's really good that they got to your clinic in the first place because there's so many out there that are in denial.
Yes.
And that is the point.
Huge. However, there is a shift in people, and I think people are getting to saturation point globally. I think anxiety levels are the interior compass giving us a warning, you know. Depression is not necessarily all bad. It's sometimes a wake up to stop, look and listen. You know, your body's going, ooh, there, you need to deal with something. Something's not cooking right. So it's a breakthrough, not necessarily breakdown. It's something. So when we're looking at holistically, we need to kind of go, what's going on for this person? Where are they? And the fact that they're there, that's the beginning. So dealing with those unconscious or subconscious triggers, that's a crucial thing. The visualizations, reframing and suggestion, obviously are keys to any good hypnotherapy session. So I've kind of covered the case study that I was going to, just in a different order. But when we're looking at that idea of him moving forward, it's vital to understand how important it is to really empower that client to take control of their recovery. So I will say, literally, you're the one with the power. You're the one with free will. I give that power to you right now. I'm going to remind you of how amazing you are and that you can do this. I'm just here as a guide, but you're the one who's going to handle the jam. And I do that with all of my clients. It's a big part of what I do. So the importance of resilience and long-term change, again, got to address the elephant in the room. You've got to kind of go, is there anything else that this client doesn't dare say, just in case we kind of deal with it today, because there may be something there. They might also be testing you. Can I trust this person? Because there might be something really big going on that they haven't actually talked about, and that's why they're so stuck. So that takes, again, that rapport, that timing, working with the clients so they don't accidentally go into resistance. So that's often, if we look at it, again, coming back to there's no mistakes, just learning, there are synchronicities and perfections within all things. So we must understand that greater web. Maybe in that moment we can't see the greater good, but if we trust that there is. So just I guess a quick summary, the 3 keys to relaxing. So in the 3 Ds, detachment, determination, direction. If you have listened today and taken something from this, I'm pleased. But that's how I work with my clients. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.